Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor Podcast. As per usual, I'm your host, Travis Mark, and I'm beyond excited to say that my guest today is none other than Lafayette, Louisiana-based musician Dave Mouton. Dave is known really well locally, both as a musician and an entrepreneur. We talked about his company, Sold Out Entertainment. We talked about the Dave Mouton EXPerience, just being hired out as a session player or doing whatever it takes to make ends meet. We talk musician life and just so much more. An interesting little story that I do allude to during the course of this interview is the fact that Dave was one of the first musicians I actually got to speak to and eventually meet when I first moved to Louisiana 5 years ago. As usual, before we jump straight into this interview, please let me remind you to check out our affiliate partnership with the lovely folks over at Soundbrenner. Please make sure you check out all Dave Mouton related links in our show notes. And if you are getting anything from these interviews, please do me a favor and leave us a rating, a review, a share, or a follow. It's extremely helpful. Dave and I were having so much fun that we kind of lost track of time during this one, so we're going to jump straight into this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Dave Mouton. It is the Musician's Mentor Podcast, and today I have the one and only Dave Mouton, saxophonist, music manager, general entertainer, quite a name out here in Louisiana. We're going to talk about it and so much more. But what I always do, Dave, is I ask my guests to do a brief introduction on themselves. And what I would like to sort of maybe cover during that answer is talk to me a little bit about how you got into music, how old you were, when the moment was that maybe you were like, oh, this is totally my thing. And then we'll kind of dissect from there. So if you wouldn't mind, tell the world who Dave Mouton is.
So I am Dave Mouton, and I am from Lafayette, Louisiana, and I own and operate Sold Out Entertainment, which is celebrating 25 years this year, which is, I never thought I would see 25 years of Sold Out, my music career goes back to fifth grade, and where I picked up the saxophone because I was inspired by the guy who played the saxophone solo in Glamorous Life by Sheila E. in the video. Dude jumps out with a soprano sax behind the dumpster, and I said, I want to play that. And, they eventually kind of told me I couldn't play that then. And so I stayed in band, and music is what saved me. And, my sophomore year of high school, I was thrown out of school. I was expelled. And I just wasn't a good student, a good kid. And I think when I came back, I kind of held on to the saxophone and said, you're my ticket out of whatever this is. Finished school, went to University of Louisiana, Lafayette, and pursued a degree in music, and spent a lot of years teaching high school kids during those times. 25 years ago, I moved to take a teaching job in a little small town called Labadeville, Louisiana, which is just south of Thibodeau. And I was a band director there for a couple of years, and didn't really dig the teaching atmosphere. I love teaching kids. I didn't like the politics that come with school boards and whatnot. And at the time, my first wife was pregnant with my oldest son. And, I was a teacher and needed ways to make the ends meet. And fates aligned, and I met a young man who played keys and sang, and we started, in essence, what would become Sold Out around early 2000 as a way to make the ends meet. That's all it was for me. Yeah. I loved performing and all that whatnot. I didn't realize there was going to be such a world that I would unlock at that moment. And here I am, 25 years later, raised 4 beautiful children that, and as well as family life, you say, oh, musicians can't raise a family. Bullshit. I have 4 of them, and then the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to me. And I think over the years, they kind of saw that this thing wasn't just dad's. We can go play gigs it really became more a profession. And I would say that over the last, say 10 years of that, I really kind of started thinking, man, this is a real business and I should maybe treat it like such, and so I love what I do. And I've been blessed to be able to be a professional musician in not the way that people expect. A lot of people think of professional musicians and they think that we're up all night and we do drugs all day and we party and that is so not the case. And the ones that take that approach, in my experiences, the ones that I see take that approach don't go very far. A lot of times they suffer from burnout at an incredible rate. And then they get disgruntled and become a shell of the musician or performer that they once were.
Yeah.
So I always live with that fear. So I do take what I do seriously, whether it be as a saxophone player or a band leader, or really anything that I get myself involved with in this industry. I'm a huge advocate for the promotion of live music, and not very well liked locally as the unofficial entertainment czar of Lafayette. And I know that the problems where I live are compounded in New Orleans in many of the same regards, but I do feel like New Orleans has a much better breeding ground for success. And so I just recently turned 50, which means I've been doing this thing for 2.5 decades. And I'm incredibly passionate about what I do. So I love talking about what I do, and I love talking about some of the things that I think work and what doesn't work. And I'm incredibly supportive of my musicians. At Sold Out Entertainment, currently I have about 50 musicians that work in my camp. And from those 50, we all staff and perform in 4 different groups under the Sold Out Entertainment. So, I'm very, very proud of that because I don't think anybody does what I do, in the way in which I do it. I find like conventional musician wisdom when it comes to things like business and relationships are not very good. And so I try to keep it very personal. And as I get older, and I'm very dedicated to what I do. So I love when I get a chance to find a young musician that wants to come into this world that you and I live in. Because I tell them everything that's going to happen before it even gets here. And I'm very proud of some of the people that I brought in my camp have gone on for great success.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I have several that have left my camp over the years to start their own groups. And it's funny because I don't think these guys even know how proud I am of them for doing that. And so I'm incredibly proud of those that I maybe in some way, shape, or form mentored into becoming the band leaders for the future.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my legacy in my head, is that when this is all said and done, I want to have a bunch of musicians say, you know what? Dave was kind of an asshole and Dave's kind of quirky and he's Dave, but they all will, I hope that they'll all say, you know what? He taught me this, whatever it is, because I'll be honest with you, Travis, I have no idea what I'm doing. I spent the first 10 years not having a clue. Just kind of doing what felt in my gut.
Yeah, trusting
the right
your
thing
instincts,
to do. And
right?
I always thought, like, if I was a musician and I played and sold out in this group, how would I want to be treated? Well, and I always think about that. I don't want someone that's just gonna, tell me I'm amazing and not give me any feedback that makes me better. I want somebody that challenges me. So I do like to challenge my musicians, no matter if they've been in the business longer than me or they just got here yesterday. I think I've always wanted to be, I went to school to be a high school band director. Well, I got everything I wanted, but it's not high school.
It's real
I'm
life.
still a band director. Right. And so for everything from production to the music to some of the bits we do on stage, a lot of them came from here. And I gave it to a group of people. And now I get to watch them add their own spin. So it never gets old for me. So I really, truly love what I do. And I appreciate you having me on today because there's so many misconceptions about what it is we do.
I know we've been trying to do this for a couple months, and I know we spoke a little bit before we started recording. I follow a pretty strict schedule with this thing, and it's always a few months ahead. So then, life gets in the way sometimes. So we know how this all works. And I've been wanting to have you on for a while because, ironically, and not even through the music scene, but you were one of the first guys that I managed to talk to when I first moved to this country.
Really? I didn't know that.
You had been working the Marriott hotels.
Yes.
And my wife used to work there. And I needed a sax player for a song. And she was like, you should phone Dave. And I was like, I cold called you. You were super cool. We got that right. Dave's on a song called Blue with my band, Deep Sleep Atlantic. If anyone wants to check that out, I'll put a link in the show notes. It's awesome. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. So you mentioned you were out there near Thibodeau doing the teaching thing. You started Sold Out. So without trying to get too nitty gritty into the finer details, and you did mention that there was another guy involved there, was that the kind of pivot that made you kind of go, well, I can make this music thing like a full-time career away from the teaching? Or had that already just been decided the moment you saw that video with Sheila E. and you were like, I'm making this my life regardless?
And it's a great question. And it's something I think about a lot. When I look back at my career, let's just say the Sold Out, beginning of Sold Out, I had no idea that I would ever want to or would be able to do this as a living. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, yes, this is all that I do for the last 10 years. This is all that I've done. And as a self-employed entrepreneur, building my music business. But prior to that, I was a high school band director. I was a financial advisor. I was a landman. I was a negotiator, and I had a strong background in sales and marketing. That's what I did during the week. And on the weekends, I would get on a plane and go home and head to a gig. And this kind of 7-day a week grind over 10, 11 years, really, it never once popped that I could do this for a living. But let's not forget, I have 4 children.
Yeah.
So I needed something to kind of keep me financially
stable,
in a good place, so that so I could still, make Sold Out every bit it needed to be. It wasn't until 2016, really, Travis, that I said I went through the process of saying, "Hey, I want to. I'm going to stop being on both sides of the fence in the corporate world, the safe world, right, and pursue my business full time." And I went through a divorce in 2016, and I had a choice. I was at a fork road. I didn't know, should I continue to play it safe, or do I do what I've always expected myself to do? And there was a moment, and I told myself, I said, if you don't believe that your business that you've ran for, at this point, 10, 12 years now, is good enough to support your dreams in your life, are you as good as what you say you are to your clients? And that was a strange question, because there's a difference between what I call hobbyists, so to speak, amateur professionals, right? Or professional amateurs, whichever side of the fence you're on. And all I see nowadays, after doing this and putting my money into monetizing my talents, and not only my talents, but the talents of others, if I see someone that's just not ready to make the plunge, I often wonder, what are you doing here? Are you just doing it for fun? Where do you go from here? If the answer is home and back to my day gig or whatever, then that signals to me some lack of confidence, a lack of self-doubt. And so that's a huge selling point for me. I want people to look at me in a good light of a professional musician. And I'm not talking about the guys we see at the Grammys. I'm not talking about the guys we see on TV. I'm by no means Sabrina Carpenter or, Kendrick Lamar or Drake. But that's a whole nother level. This is a real life, situation that we find ourselves in. And I gotta say, I see more musicians now playing, hustling, and they're making this their business. They're monetizing their talents, and not just as a band leader, as a performer. And I can't explain to Travis, the guys and the girls that do this. I see progress when I watch them, through social media, because I've worked with most all of them and are very friendly with a lot of them. So I'm super proud when I see them taking a chance and betting on themselves. And so that's kind of what I've always kind of thought that I could do. So I went through a divorce and said, this is what I'm gonna do. And it was like, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always, go do something else, right?
You can always go back to the corporate world.
Yeah, I could, but I don't think I can anymore. I think I'm ruined by this business. But I will say, I do have to mention this because I find it interesting. When I look back on my career and I look at some of the strengths that I have, that have helped me manage all this time, everything I learned was back from when I was doing something else.
Yeah.
Right? Like I learned how to teach, right? I learned how to arrange. Like I do a lot of horn arranging for Sold Out. And so I love arranging. So I got to develop that skill set, a skill set I learned in college and working with kids and their parents. And with the background in sales, I took those tools and I applied them to the music business. And this may sound funny, I'm quirky and I'm a ritual guy. I do the same things all the time. And I have a ritual and it all comes back to sales. Because when I first entered sales, it was commission only, don't sell, don't eat, right? So I could sit around and do nothing all day, but how long is that gonna last? I had to really learn how to prospect and find clients and bring up the conversation, even if it's awkward. And I'm grateful for that because now, because of my relationships and my clients and people that I just know, Sold Out's a lot of word of mouth. We play a cousin, we'll do the other cousin's wedding. I've done families, all 4 daughters, right? So you start to develop a relationship with these people and they think of you when they think of live music. It's like Coming to America. When you think of live music, think of Dave Mouton. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so that's where it really comes down to. I don't think people choose a band or choose their live entertainment based on, oh, that band's good. The truth is that we're all good.
Yeah.
You're good friends with someone I love is Andrew Otan. Andrew.
Good buddy,
Andrew's my buddy, and we've been in this business a long time together. And I admire what he does. I think Mojo's great. I would recommend Mojo to any client. I really would, and I have. I think they're all good. I think Mojo's good. I think a lot of the groups are good. But when you see brides and parents asking, well, who should I get for my wedding? Who should I get for this convention? There's a gazillion choices that are thrown up in front of these people. And I look at those situations and I say, you know what? I always want to comment and I don't, because everything I type is going to be perceived as something terrible.
Yeah.
But the truth is, what I want to say is we are all very good at what we do. Any one of these bands can go into your event, your wedding, and do a hell of a job. The difference is that you got to determine how much you want to spend. But really, a lot of times it comes down to who they feel most comfortable with. People do business with people most like themselves. Do you feel that to be a fair statement?
Yeah, definitely.
So now, who hires musicians? It certainly isn't musicians.
Yeah.
Right? When people are hiring like an entity, a band, these are people that don't know shit about the music business, how it works, and what it does. And I already know that. So I play dumb. I dumb myself down to be a better communicator for them and teach them a little bit without overwhelming them. And so I think that's kind of been my saving grace as far as communicating with people that are non-musicians. I understand how their minds work. And I don't think like a musician. And that's the one time I don't think like a musician is when I'm in the band director chair. I think like a business owner. And I think along the same lines that most of my friends that don't play music out in the world, people I was in the PTO with, I mean, my whole life, Travis, when I talk to people and they say, what do you do? I'm a professional musician. They look at me like I just came out of a spaceship. They can't believe, but they often think the local landscape. They think Lafayette, where I live. The truth is, I don't play very much here. I have a few things I like to do here, but my time is spent traveling and spreading the word. And you learn a lot when you do that. And so that's, I have a great education and background. But I'm always learning. The music world is changing.
Constantly.
Totally. Always. And so I try to stay ahead of the gap as far as marketing and technology. And some things I do old school, like I like to pick up the phone and call a client rather than email. I prefer that.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're freaked out. They're like, "Oh, I didn't think you'd call."
Well, because a
Why?
lot of people don't pick up the phone anymore. It's like,
No, they
it's
don't.
funny that everybody has usually the latest, greatest phone and phone plan now, but nobody picks up the phone. I mean, I
No.
probably leave more voice messages per week than actual phone calls, because most people it's too easy to kind of go, I don't feel like talking right now. But to bring a lot of your points to this topic, I find it interesting because in terms of a lot of attitudes towards, oh, I'm a musician, that phrase seems to confuse a lot of people because firstly, there seem to be two categories for the average person. You're either a famous rock star, pop star type, pop culture,
Delusional?
or you're the guy that sits at home each day, smoking blunts and, happens to gig once a week or once a month. And you happen to be lucky because you married a partner that takes care of you. That seems to be the attitudes. And it's funny because I know musicians on each side of those camps. And
Me too.
on the not famous rock star musician kind of category, some of those people are some of the hardest working people I've met. Yourself, Andrew. I mean, I could name hundreds.
Me too.
And a lot of these guys and girls lead good lives and they hustle, man. It's like you said earlier, like they constantly bet on themselves. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it's interesting because it's just, I guess, the way we've been stereotyped in culture, And
For years.
Yeah, and you can't even necessarily get upset by it. You mentioned that you spend a lot of time traveling and doing gigs outside of Lafayette. But when you are in Lafayette, talk to me a little bit about what that local scene is like. Just because, I've played out there a bunch of times, but not enough to know. And I'm sure there's people out there who would love to know. So what's the scene like over there?
So, recently, just to give you a preface with a little information. So I grew up here, right? So but when I left, here in the late 90s, there was a thriving scene of some kind in Lafayette, mostly original rock groups, a lot of venues to play. And when I returned here in 2012, 12 years later, I came back and I was like, what the fuck happened? Like, where'd all the venues were closed. And right today we have two, what I would consider legitimate music venues. That'd be Rock and Bowl Lafayette and the Grouse Room. The rest of it is just Mexican restaurants and taco scene. That is the music scene here in Lafayette. And what I find so interesting, and I'm gonna send you the link. They did earlier this year, or at the end of last year, they did a musician survey. This was the Lafayette government, the Tourist Commission, and the Visitors Bureau, whatever. This is just people that kind of run this town. They did a survey, a census, to all people, professional musicians, and people that are in the industry, people like production people, lighting, rigging, all that. And they did this survey, which I took. And I was brutally honest with with my answers. And they released the results, I think, just last week. And I had posted some of them on a page, and I got to tell you, it was it was basically confirmed everything that I thought about this place and some of the things that it does wrong in making this place um, more friendly for professional musicians in general. Um, According to their survey results, I'm gonna pull it up because I don't want to be misquoted, but it kind of said that only 7% of the musicians in this area perform and play professionally, meaning it is their sole career. 7%. Um, what I found so interesting about the local music scene here is that it leads on to say $13.2 million is brought in from this live music scene, with damn near half of that, 6.6 million, going back into the local economy. Now, when I saw those numbers and I started to look at it a little bit, I'm thinking, this is bullshit.
Totally.
I don't. If I'm part of the collective, right? If I'm in charge of these folks, I would say, okay, great. We invested $6.6 million into our local community. What have you done with it? We have a music venue or two that closes every year. We have far too many musicians in this small little area with no place to play. There's not like venue. We're not fighting for turf. We're fighting for market share. And that's just not enough for all of us. So, am I trying to fight and get into that rat race? Not necessarily. I wish that they knew that, hey, we have a lot of musicians here and we just don't have a lot of places to play. And the result is that it's kind of like if we ran out of food, right? There would be people that get pretty violent and shitty about not having food, right? And that's what I find happens in the music community here. Everybody kind of forms into little communities. It's like The Walking Dead, and I'm Rick. Everybody's got these communities ready to take away their resources, their musicians, their players. And I think it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's good for the area. What runs the roost here in Lafayette, believe it or not, is Zydeco.
Yeah.
And Cajun music, which I personally cannot stand, nor can I tolerate the sound of accordion at all. It gives me migraines. And so it really does since I was a kid. And my grandfather was a famous Cajun musician named Robbie Romero, played accordion, years and years and years ago. And he was awful, like not as a player, but as a person. He was an alcoholic, he was drunk, and he basically did all the musician stereotypes, and I think that now I don't emulate those things, but I see the scene. There's not much of one. So I can tell you with 100% certainty that if all I played and all I worked was my home market, I'd starve to death. Yeah. I'd probably be, door-dashing or back in the insurance business because you have a better chance of survival there. But I think that over the years, I've built up enough escape rooms and outlets and markets in other cities that I don't have to be so overly reliant. My biggest pet peeve is the musicians, especially locally. They look at me and you, because you travel a bit too. You could be self-contained in the city of New Orleans with a group like I have. Here in Lafayette, you better be good at a few other things in the industry, or you're not going to get it. You're just not going to get enough work. And obviously everybody complains. My thing is musicians, they look at me and they say, well, how do you got so many gigs? Because I'm not afraid to get in my car and drive to where they are. And a lot of musicians here in Lafayette are just kind of coddled, I think. I'm going to make as much money as I can and drive the least distance. That sounds like an awful business plan, doesn't it?
It does.
So there's opportunities. You just have to be willing to go get it and good enough to deliver when you get the call.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it.
So on that point, how important do you feel it is to be in a hub nowadays? I'm not even going to consider New Orleans. I'm going to say a Miami, an Austin, Texas, a Los Angeles, a London, a Nashville. How important do you think it is to be in those? Atlanta. Oh yeah, Atlanta's huge. To be in a place like that, if you're trying to get out there as a musician, or like you say, be willing to travel. Or do you think with the advances of things like social media that a lot of guys can sustain careers by staying in a place now because of social media? And I'm not even trying to play devil's advocate. I'm just trying to get your opinion.
No, it's a good point. That's a good one, man. Yeah, it made me think for that one. I feel like in Louisiana in general, let's just use Louisiana, we are a culture-rich state that has produced some amazing talent. If you look at the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame and see some of the huge stars that have come out of this state, it's staggering.
Yeah.
One thing they all have in common is they all left. They all left and went to another hub. And you mentioned places like London and Atlanta, and New Orleans, compared to Atlanta, makes New Orleans look like Lafayette. I have, a promoter that I work with who does a lot of work in Texas and Atlanta, and he refuses to do anything in Lafayette. He lives here because it's close to the airport. And he does shows in Atlanta, and his biggest thing is he says there's just no sustainable budget or investing for that here. Some of the things Atlanta, has a Party on the Moon entertainment, Dennis Smith, who does what I do, but it's like steroids. They have planes and buses and hundreds of musicians that they employ, 13 different groups, Travis, that they deploy all over the United States.
Wow.
Every now and again, you'll catch them in New Orleans, but not typically. They make their money at the convention market in Atlanta, along with a thriving music scene, not only just for, jazz or rock or gospel or R&B. They have all of it. New Orleans kind of has that jazz Trojan horse, as I call it, because there's no jazz in New Orleans anymore. They use that word a lot, but it's really just musicians promoting themselves and their music, and that's great. It's a great platform for that. But here in Lafayette, we don't have the infrastructure to support it. We don't have enough production companies. We don't have enough venues. And so they say that, I've been here or around Lafayette most of my life, aside from the decade I left. And when I came back, I didn't see any development in 12 years. There was no new venues. The festivals, which is a lot of festivals here, that's a lot of bands being employed. I'm grateful for that. But man, the net payout on those is tiny. Now, is it whose responsibility is it? Is it our musicians' responsibility to ask for more money when we know there isn't any? Or is it the consumer getting prepared to pay a little bit more? Or is it just the city managing a scene that they believe might bring about more crime, more drugs, more people to enforce? And that's kind of where I'm at now. I almost have the impression that my city, here in Lafayette, where I live now, they're not interested in bands and music and anything that's going to gather a large crowd that they're not going to make any money on. It's disgruntled. It's disheartening at times. I try not to dwell on it too much because it will eat you. I can't. I throw my wife tells me all the time. She's like, you get so upset and angry when you see like an injustice or a travesty happen in the music scene locally. And I said, yeah, I do. because sooner or later, it's going to be me that's going to destroy this.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm trying to protect at the end of the day is my business.
Of course.
Yeah. But at the same time, I know that I drive the dream. It has nothing to do, the city can't stop me from performing. The local talking heads that don't stop me. They haven't stopped me from, earning an income and employing 100 musicians. We've probably paid out $200,000 to musicians every year. Every year we do it. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah, you should be.
So no one's going to stop me from doing that. I'll figure a way around it, whether it means traveling to somewhere else or changing my attitude. Stop expecting so much from an area that has been dying for 20 years.
Yeah.
I know there's places that are worse than Lafayette.
Of course.
I do. If you're on Cover Band Central on Facebook, you hear every week some band in Paducah, Iowa, bitching about there's 3 bands trying to fight in one club.
Yeah.
But those guys aren't like us. I think that us in Louisiana, we have a lot of good models to follow to develop a career in music.
Yeah.
I don't think these guys in Paducah, Idaho on Cover Band Central are getting the best education in terms of what it takes. And so I am grateful. Even though I bash the shit out of it, and I hold my city accountable for their stupidity at times, I do appreciate that. Hey, look, every Mexican restaurant in Lafayette has opened their doors and offered asylum to musicians that choose to go and play there for very little money. They don't care about the future of that person. They just want somebody to come in for $100 and play guitar and sing. So I think that my aspirations are bigger than that, personally. And as I'm grateful that I'm able to put some of those aspirations in motion, in action. So yeah, I'm not all grumpy.
No, dude, and not at all. I brought up social media. I want to talk about it for just a second.
Please, let's talk about it.
You mentioned marketing and a few other sort of topics similar to that when we first started talking. What are your overall thoughts on social media? And have you got any sort of variable mindsets in regard to what you think's good about it, what you think's bad about it, especially from a musician's point of view?
That is a great question. So I have a lot of experience in social media marketing. About 6-7 years ago, when social media marketing was really just getting traction for businesses, I was grateful enough to really, I was a marketer for a best-selling book called Marketing to Mind States by a good friend of mine who lives out in Dallas, and his name's Will Leach. And Will asked me to market his book, right, on social media, because I had kind of figured out at the time the algorithm, what it wanted. Now, since that time, you've probably noticed that the algorithms for Facebook, Instagram have changed drastically.
Yeah.
The results used to be likes and comments. That used to be the benchmark that we gauged everything on. And I did a seminar about 6 months ago for wedding vendors talking about social media marketing, talking about this very thing, that if you're in it for likes and comments, you won't be in it very long. It has changed. It has become a site where you may not get a whole lot of gratification in terms of likes and comments, but things like reach, how many people are seeing it? How many people are sharing it? I could do a whole class on how social media could be better for people like you and I. It's not the algorithm's fault. It's that because I think people have become more mindful of how it works too. There are people that will not like or comment on anything. Travis, I can eat an apple and shit a fruit salad on Facebook. And if I could do that, I would get 2 likes.
Yeah.
But 150 people would see it and wouldn't comment because they don't want to be linked to it. Do you notice that?
Yeah.
Somebody said the other day, I saw it. You didn't see what I posted? I saw it. I just didn't comment or nothing on it. Why not? I don't know. Because we've gotten used to scrolling. So every time we post, everything you post on your page, post at the right time, do everything right, post it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But what I'm really hoping for is that people see it. They don't have to like it. They have to comment. But if you want to help us out there in social media world, like our shit.
Yeah.
And share that shit.
It's so helpful.
Talk about that shit. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, it frustrates me beyond belief because I was telling my musicians, or I call them my cast members.
Yeah.
We have an app that we communicate with. And recently I went and asked for their help. And I don't know if you guys see this or you notice this and you're into things, but like musicians are the worst marketers and promotion people on earth. And I sent this message out to my cast and I said, hey, let's do me a favor. Please follow Sold Out Entertainment's page, follow my experience page, and follow one another's business pages. And when you're 50 strong, that is a lot of people clicking that'll help bring your post into the market reach that you want to see. And a lot of my musicians, man, they're weird, man. Like some of them, they don't want people to know they play music on the side. You know, some of them, it's weird. Some of them, they don't, I'm like, share it, like it. Well, I don't want to like all that. I don't want it. I don't want all the comments in my notification. Well, turn them off.
Turn them off, yeah,
like
exactly.
I got to tell them, help me to help you. Because by liking and commenting and showing some pride, I guess, in the organization and in the craft, you add credibility to what it is we do. You know, and there's some people that just don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so you play at a venue and it's half full. Well, that's your fault for not helping market it. It's not just my job. You know, marketing is everybody's job in the organization because everybody wins when it's done correctly. But I will say this, as much as we think social media has creep vibes, it feels creepy and it feels awkward. If it doesn't feel creepy and it doesn't feel awkward, you're not doing it right. And I struggle with that as a marketer. When it comes to sold out pages and I market, you know, I have a pretty good idea of what I want to say and what I want to use media-wise, whether it be a picture or a video or a meme. But when it comes to my project, like marketing Dave Mouton as an artist, I turn into cabbage head. Like I can't do it. I feel like a moron. So there are some things that I think people would go through, and I go through it too. You got to get over it.
Yeah.
Or you're always going to have showing the same tired ass shit to 150 people. Because the average post on social media, 150 people. Soda has 11,000 followers on social media. I'm proud of that. But if I put a post that gets 2 likes and it only shows 17 people, you know why they're doing that? Because it's not good enough. Not enough people are helping me propel that. So it's a never-ending battle, but it always stands for a place that if a client or someone interested in you or your project, they go to your page. Well, they can look all damn day. I just want them to show up. Show up and do your own due diligence. I don't care if you can like it. It don't cost a cent to do. It takes just a second, but it helps those people. And just to tell you something I did for you that you may not realize. So when you invited me on the Musician's Mentor, I went to your Facebook page. And if I click on the link and there's 3 dots to the right, and you click on that, you can invite all of your friends to come like your page. They don't know Travis Mark. They don't know the Musician's Mentor. What they did know is that I asked them to like it. And you probably saw a huge spike in your likes. I know at least 40 of my friends.
I haven't been on today. I've got to be honest. I have such a love-hate relationship with social media.
Most of us do.
But most times I hate it. You know, it's just become a little bit too distracting. Like, not to talk about myself here, but I've always prided myself on self-discipline. Like, listen, you want something done, I'm the guy, man. I will get it done. And
Right.
since it's so easy to just watch a dog swimming with a duck or whatever the hell it might be that you're
It's
into.
It's the cats that are singing to me.
Ah,
The
dude,
singing
it's just
cats, they're
like,
so cute.
before I know it, I'm just like, I work a lot in production and I do a lot of mixing, and, I'll take a break for a second and I'll see a reel and I'll be like, oh, sweet. And before I know it, an hour's gone by and I've gone,
A rabbit hole.
I don't have an hour. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't have a spare hour to go watch shit on my phone. So,
Either.
and I've been having this conversation with a couple of my musician friends lately. We've been talking about how much we don't achieve by being on that screen. And so I've been trying being the optimal word here, to just not be on it, even though I'm on it, and it's proven difficult. So I appreciate you doing that, but I haven't been on it in a few days. So
Well, you both bless you for that, But and I'm gonna flip the coin here, and I'm not playing devil's advocate with you either. But I think that when you start to compare those ideologies, you start to see why we fall short. Social media, the monster that is social media, and I know that the music industry and social media, boy, they're about two industries that were made for one another, right?
Yeah.
So, and the way I handle is that I have my personal stuff that I neglect and can care less. But they have about 4 entities, businesses, one of them being sold out, one's my group. I'm also a voice actor, so I manage the page for our television channel. So I have 4 business Facebooks that I manage every day.
Yeah.
And one tool that I use a lot is I have a very simple template that I use for each one. So I don't need to think as much or spend as much time looking for inspiration. I just commit and say, I'm going to post this on, like, I got a weird social media thing, but like I will post every day. I look at my analytics, I look at my insights, and I'm trying to find when I can post 2 a day on each page at the optimal time, whether I'm promoting an event, whether, I have a lot of things going on. It's never easy. When you have nothing going on, it's hard to market on social media. When you have a lot going on, it's even harder. Where to go? So by giving myself accountability each day, and I always tell myself, I'm doing this because it's going to continue to drive the business. And it has. It may not be in results that you can get all excited over, but you just have to consistently do it. And if you have a new page or a new entity, it takes even more work to get your followers up. But it is important, and you can't underestimate it. About a week ago, I had a meeting with a promoter and a booking agency that I was talking to about some dates around the country with my jazz project. And they went to my Instagram page, which has only been about 6 months old, maybe. And both of them made a comment, I wish you had more followers. They didn't say, I wish I played better. They didn't say they wish I had a better stage show. They said, I wish I had more followers. And my answer to them was, yeah, you're right. I wish I had them too. But I'm too busy being awesome in real life to design awesomeness online too. So yeah, it is a double-edged sword, and it's just part of it. It's just part of the gig. And I don't care if you're a musician or you're a vendor in the industry. If you have any sort of business and you don't have a Facebook business page that you are actively marketing on, I'd say 75% of the people that you're trying to do business with aren't going to have any interest in you. It's not going to be enough substance for them. It's almost like Chinese water torture. You have to kind of constantly keep posting to keep your brand in front of their face. They might be sick and damn tired of you, but they're not going to unfollow you. They're not going to block you. They'll just keep scrolling. So, but it's important, and I did, like I said, I did I guess a teaching clinic for some wedding vendors and I was in a room with people in the industry that didn't have a Facebook, don't know the first thing about social media marketing, not a clue. They all have it, but they don't know how to do it. And I broke down for them like the best way to get started. And I say it all the time: you don't have to be good to get started. You just got to get started to be good.
Yep.
And you can screw up, but to me, it's about consistency. I want to show pictures. I want to show video. And it's important because all those things at the end of the day, whether it makes us feel icky or we don't feel like looking at this data, I promise you the data that's going to be important is the bank balance, right? And the bottom line. When you see that grow as a result of not just your social media activity, but all of the other things you do, whether it be performance, every performance you do is an advertisement, it's a commercial. I hate the word gig, Gig. I hate the word gig.
Do you know where it originates?
No.
It's actually quite a cool little story. Okay, so
Tell me.
gig came about during one of the Great Depressions because, people were starving, there was no money going around, and
Right.
certain musicians would finally get the opportunity to perform and make a bit of money so that they could feed their families or at least eat themselves for the night. And so it became abbreviated, God is good. God is good.
Really?
And that's
I didn't
apparently
know that.
over years and decades, apparently it became gig. And I didn't know this either. I was told this. So again, I'm quoting. I might be misquoting, but that's what I heard.
That's a great story.
And
I like
it
it.
could be true, right? Because even if you think
Yeah.
about it from a working musician point of view, it's like you look at the calendar each month and you go, "Oh wow, man, I've got 24 gigs this month." And when you look at it like that, whether you're religious or not, something out there is blessing you enough so that you can pay your bills and you'll get your
Totally.
food and all that. So I don't know. I like to think it maybe is true.
Yeah, I love it.
You mentioned branding. I want to talk that for a second, but I'm going to flip it on its head a little. And I've asked this question before, but it's always cool because I always seem to get slightly different answers from everybody. So let's look at Dave Mouton as a brand, okay? What would you do if you had decided, and this is all hypothetical, of course, that you are going to relocate somewhere? Now, we mentioned Atlanta a few times, so let's do it. Nobody knows you in Atlanta. This is for purpose of example. I'm sure people do know you in Atlanta, but for purpose of example, you decide that you're going to relocate to Atlanta and you need to establish the Dave Mouton brand. What do you do?
Man, that's a tough question, man. Shit. So I think that I look at it like I feel like I could market myself anywhere I was, Certainly being Louisiana, I'm a homegrown boy, I've been to nearly every city in this damn state, but if I were to be dropped in, say, Atlanta for a reason, my marketing wouldn't change very much as far as what I'm doing now. I would bring it with me. I wouldn't start from scratch, but I would probably go to every booking agent, every jazz club in person, not social media. I would get dressed up in a suit and a hat, and I would go to every single place that musicians are going to. I look at the events on Facebook to find out who's playing where. And I want to know, because I send them press kits now. I can only imagine if I were in Atlanta or if I were in, I don't know, parts of Florida where smooth jazz is super huge. I would find every booking agent, every band there that's doing something and get to know them, because they're going to end up being mouthpieces for me as we go on. You mentioned Atlanta. Specifically, I have a bass player named Myron Foster, who I've had been able to work with, on a show we did, and we've worked on a few songs together. And he's great. Like but he even tells me Atlanta's a hard market, and he's a transplant from Mississippi. So, he understands, but You have to understand there's so much more going on there. There are no hometown boys, in Atlanta. I imagine the hometown boys in Atlanta get treated just like the hometown boys do anywhere else. Um, but when you're new in a new city and you don't act like you're new and you kind of relaunch yourself as the guy in town, and that's probably what I would do. I would probably say I'm the best saxophone player you've ever heard.
I like it, man.
And they'd all look at me like a cocky asshole. But the truth is that I believe that I'm the best saxophone player that any person's ever heard.
Yeah.
Because, and they start to believe my bullshit. and so I got to earn back that credibility, and that's how I've done it here. I've moved. I grew, the first half is sold out. I was in Houma, Louisiana, small town, small community. And when I came to Lafayette, I made a big deal about it. And people assumed that I was always here.
Cool.
In Lafayette because my name was associated here. But when I was in Houma, Louisiana, nobody knew who the hell Dave Mouton was, but they knew who Sold Out was. So that the two things became synonymous. And I like that connection, even with my jazz group. It's like from the people that brought you Sold Out Entertainment, the Dave Mouton EXPerience, even though it's a completely different genre and headspace for me as a performer, even though musicians all come from the same place. So I think it does give me some credibility. But if you draw me in a city, I'm going to go do a show. First 3 weeks I'm there. And I might not make any money, but I'm going to make a name for myself. See, I don't worry about like the money. I always tell musicians, I personally, and this sounds crazy, I'm not motivated financially for music. Music is a passion thing. Yes, I do realize that I earn a living. I know how to do all that, but it doesn't motivate. I want to do what I want. I want to do what's best for the brand. And yes, if we can get some big giant shows with big giant paydays, yes, I'll be excited. But I'll be more excited if I had a steady track record of success. People say, man, I have musicians say, I don't know how you do it, professional musician. They've already wrote it off completely. And I tell them the same thing. When I flip through my calendar and I see not gigs, but shows, it's a mind state, right? God is good. And he might have brought you that gig. But when I hear the word gig, I think low effort, small money, nothing hurt, right? There's no big deal. That's a gig to me. But when you say it's a show is something you prepare for. A show is something that you hold others accountable for doing their role in the show. If I wanted to charge for a show, that's a much bigger price tag than can I have a gig?
Yeah, totally.
Because a gig is it might be a 3-letter word for God is good. And to me, it shows to me the lack of experience. That if it's all about just a gig, well, you're going to be spending your whole life doing gig after gig after gig. I want to do a show. I want to do a production. And I want to leave an impact. And that's that. And it's just a change in thinking. Yes, I know my cast members, a lot of them professional musicians, run around a little place playing gig after gig after gig. And good for them, God bless them. But when they come around me, I always want to make it more kind of romanticize it a bit. Because it's easy to get in a rut. You ever at a show, Travis, setting up your drums, you're like, I do the same things for the $50 gig as I do for the $500 gig. You ever think that? I do the same shit, whether it's 50 or 500. And I ask my musicians all the time, what's the difference between a Travis Mark show where you're getting paid $50 and a Travis Mark show where you're getting $500? What's the difference? Do you bring out like a shinier cymbal? Maybe a fresh set of sticks? Maybe take a shower? Like, I believe everybody, when I go out, whether I get $0 on a show, and I do. I have friends I play with, I don't want the money. I just want the stage and the opportunity to get better and make his product look better. And then all the money will come and take care of itself eventually.
Yeah, I believe
That's
that.
what I tell myself. It might be a pipe dream, but I've seen for 25 years now the pipe dream come to life every year,
Yeah.
And so it can be done. But it's a great question on branding and marketing. I think that I could probably talk just about marketing and branding for musicians, not just bands and entities like Sold Out or Mojo, but Travis Mark, drummer extraordinaire. Travis Mark, visual timekeeper, right? You got to have a catch. And once you start to believe in your own catch or your elevator speech, you'd be surprised how much better you are at living it. So that's just my wisdom from a lot of years doing this.
I
Is
dig
that
it.
people will believe. Yeah, people will believe what you tell them and show them.
I love that phrase, elevator speech. That's cool, man. That's a cool terminology.
At this point, we're going to do something we don't usually do. I'm going to take a brief pause for the cause, and I want to tell everybody who's listening to please go and check out my good friend David Trahan's podcast. It's called New Orleans Musicians and can be found at neworleansmusicians.com or pretty much anywhere that you can stream podcasts. It's a great show. He talks to local musicians. He talks about their lives and what drives them. I've been a guest on the show, and Dave's a really cool dude. So check him out, neworleansmusicians.com or anywhere that you can find a good streaming service. Search for New Orleans Musicians. Now back to the show.
Dave, what for you personally has been the hardest part about being a career musician?
The hardest part about being a professional musician, meaning like this is the only thing that I do?
Since that became your source of income, that's how you feed your kids, that's how you pay your mortgage, that's how you essentially have to
exist.
What is the hardest elements or hardest part?
Honestly, it gets in my head, and I got to tell you a little background to this because it all starts to kind of make sense. We're coming up, this is the 25 years of Sold Out Entertainment. But just 5 years ago, we would have been celebrating our 20th year anniversary, and it was during the pandemic year in 2020. And that was only 4 years after I had established myself as, this is all I'm going to do, right? I'm going to be brave and build. And when that happened, I saw shows just vanish. I was legitimately afraid that a return to live music may or may not happen. And if it were to happen, it was going to be reduced to the ridiculous. And so during that year, I found, I continued to play, continued to record that year. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, man, if live music goes away and I've got this, 9-10-piece band that I'm committed to booking and playing with, and during that year, wedding planning was down. There wasn't a lot of bookings. There wasn't a lot of shows to be had. I had to develop this kind of mindset that every show I did had to be my best. And I set a standard to myself that was impossible to maintain. And it kind of drained the fun part of it out for me. Because I was scared. I was literally afraid and thinking that I might need to figure out something else and that maybe I screwed up. But I weathered through that year and every year after that to get to this point. So it made it extra special for me. But the hardest thing for me is just making sure that, look, in this business, you get one chance. If you screw it up, the road back up is hard. You're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. But you go out there and you just start giving up or taking things for granted or not marketing as well, or what I like to call resting on your laurels. There's bands that are around, that have been around for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And But I think a lot of them gave up 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
They don't really give a shit. They're just resting on laurels. And I certainly am not, because to me, every week, every month that goes by, and every show is successful and everything's good and we're profitable, and we made a strong argument for the brand, then I'm happy. I'm really happy. It's those times like when I'm off, like I think next month, I'm off 2 weekends in a row in the month of March.
A rarity.
Well, one of them by rarity, one of them by choice, right? I took that one off. I had some things to attend to. And the other one, I had like 2 weekends that were just open for no real reason aside from Lent, post, whatever. When I see too many open dates on my calendar, guess what happens? Man, are we closing down? Are people tired of me? I think like that. And that's hard for me because as much as I'm confident and believe in what I do, I look at numbers. I look at trends. I do. I'm freakishly weird about numbers and trends. And I want to see the trends always go up. I don't want to see downturns for no explainable reason.
Yeah.
And I answer the phone. And when I see a number I don't recognize, unless it says spam risk on top of it, I assume that it's somebody calling to book the band.
Yeah, client.
Yep, and I'm going to answer that damn phone, and I have to be what those people expect me to be. I had a parent of a bride call me just last week, and it blew my mind away. And she apparently had been talking to different bands, and she called for me, and I missed it. I called her back, an hour or two later. And she said, "Oh, thank you for calling back. We've been calling bands for a week. You're the first to call us back." I said, I didn't believe her. I said, "You serious?" She said, "No." She said, "A couple of them sent me an email. She says, but you're the first to call me." By the end of that 10, 15-minute phone call, I booked the gig. So it pays to answer the phone.
It really does, dude. I mean, different scale, but same thing. I mean, I juggle so many bands per month, and I always ask, not immediately, but or sometimes it'll just come up organically. Like, how come? Where's your usual guy? Oh, this happened or that happened. Oh, it's not like I'm the first call, dude. I'm fully aware of that. But same thing, I answer the phone, dude. It's like, and then I show up on time, and they can't believe that. Like, musicians just don't show up on time. It's like, come on now. That's the easiest thing you can do. The easiest thing you can do.
I feel that way too. And I've come to the realization that, maybe we're the exception to the rule. Your whole life, I've known people that were late for everything. It doesn't matter. And musicians, I think, especially when you put a component of travel into the equation, and that's something that I often deal with. I know a group, say in town here in Lafayette, they all live in Lafayette. They only play in Lafayette. Well, of course they're usually on time. When you add the element of I have people traveling 2-3 hours into different cities week in and week out, some people just get caught up in traffic. They can't leave the house on time. I know a lot of musicians I work with that are teeter on the on time, maybe not. It's because they have kids and a spouse, and they have to do all their honeydews before they hit the road. And so I get that because I did it. But it's the guys that show up late for no reason. They don't say, "I'm sorry, I'm late." They don't offer you a reason. They just show up late and look at me like I should be glad they're there.
Yeah.
Which I am. And how I feel about musicians, I have a lot of grace with musicians. I understand the travel. I understand. I don't expect people to be dead at 6 o'clock or whatever the call time is. I just want you to tell me when you're coming. Tell me what to expect, because I don't really need you there prior to this certain time. But me personally, as a musician, if you ever hired me for a gig, I promise you I'm going to be there probably as early as I can. Because I want to get there. I'm the kind of player, I want to get there. I want to get set up. I want to be in the right headspace.
Yeah.
I want to get my horns warmed up. I don't mind being early. because staying home and waiting for a certain time to leave drives my anxiety through the roof.
I get it, dude.
Dude, trust me, this good example. This morning, I was up 6:30, 7 o'clock this morning, like most days. And I knew I had a big show tonight. The wake up was different than it was, say, yesterday. Because I had this dopamine rush prepared. And that is my drug of choice. So I want to be excited about what I'm doing, and I want to do it well. And so what helps me do that is, yeah, it takes me longer than the average person to create whatever it is I'm doing. I get my own way. You know, you were talking about, I wish I had an hour to go watch a band play. I think to myself, I wish I had an hour where I wasn't interrupted doing something else important. Give me 8 hours and no one talk to me. Take my phone away from me. Delete the Facebook app. These are my traps. But at the same time, I might get an email that comes in for booking the band. So I've learned to just put on different hats and return back to whatever it is I was trying to do. But yes, I think musicians work themselves out of this business by abuse of drug and alcohol. That ruins many of them. Being late, and just number 3, being an asshole. Like that, if you don't avoid those 3 things, you could be in this business forever. I know musicians I work with, they're not the best player in the world. Like their playing isn't going to change your life, but they legitimately care about what they're doing, and they care about their group or their business, whatever it is, and they're a nice guy or a sweet girl, and that's why people succeed in this business. You know, I've been known. I'm a passionate and fiery guy. The filter between brain and mouth doesn't exist in me. So people know it's just Dave. I got something to say. I feel something about it. I'm going to tell you. And especially, but if it's threatening my income or my business model or tainting my branding or something I've worked on for 25 years, yeah, I'm upset. And anybody would be.
Of course.
You know, yeah, anybody would be. So, people have their own feelings about certain things, but I believe if it's going to take, I've sacrificed so much time from my family, from my kids, from, all my life. At 50 years old, the last thing I want to do is go somewhere and waste my time.
I get it.
You do. Most pros do. I get
it, man. I get it.
Totally.
Dave,
totally.
I have one last question for you, and I will kind of double barrel it in case you want to answer one or the other or both. But basically, what is either the best piece of advice you've ever received in regards to having a music career? Or if you can't think of something along those lines, what is something you've learned along the way that perhaps we haven't spoken about that you feel might be good advice for somebody trying to create a music career?
That's a good question. First of all, the best advice I was ever given was never given to me, ever. No one ever helped me and my business get off the ground when I was young. I knew a lot of musicians that told me a lot of stories and anecdotes that I was able to pull some knowledge from, but no one ever just said, you know what, you need this. No one ever said it. And I know why now. Because normally musicians don't want to hear it. You can take a musician and put them in a corner and tell them all kinds of wisdom nuggets. They're not going to eat it. Some people, especially musicians, just coincidence, they have to do it their own way. Because they're artists at the core. But if I were to give advice to someone, and I would tell all of them, do it and be the best you can be as a player, individually, at the end of the day. I take a lot of pride in that. And I know why. Because let's just be real here about it. We have all these bands. We have bands everywhere. Louisiana, 50% of our weddings utilize live music. Did you know that?
No.
50%, highest in the country, right? So we have a lot of weddings and a lot of bands, a lot of people willing to do it. And the difference between the professional amateur and the amateur professional is that they sometimes kind of think they're greater than they are, right? Like you mentioned practice very early in the call. I practice at least 3 times a week outside of a gig, at home. Right behind me, I got a book of cello suites.
I see that.
Here we go. That's what I practice. I don't practice boogie shoes. I don't practice any of the shit I play. I practice technique and being a better player. And I think by doing that for myself and I don't brag about it, I do. It's like my workout. I work out every day and I'll pull the horn out 2 or 3 times a week. And when I don't pull the horn out, I sound like shit. I got to tell you a great word of advice, though, for musicians in general. When I was in college, my professor was a guy named Dr. William Hockhempel. And Bill was probably one of the best saxophone players in the world, circa 1975 to 79. He won the International Saxophone Convention in Geneva in 1974. He was the best in the world. And he went on later and he taught me in college, and he was an awesome guy. And he did tell me something one day that stuck with me for years, and I tell my musicians that now, especially horn players. Horn players, it's a physical thing. Drummers, it's a physical thing. Guitarists, physical. It's a physical thing. He said, you can miss one day of practice, and no one will know but you. If you miss 2 days of practice, no one will know except you and me, right, the teacher. You miss 3 days of practice, and everybody knows. And I always tell myself that, I've got to the point where I can hear horn players play, and I can tell whose chops are physically fit and who hadn't played since last Saturday. And I start to think about these little things and how these good habits spread throughout a unit per se. And if you have a unit of people that are all professional-minded, capable players, and I will say, I'm proud to say, there's not a player in my group that I think is a bad player. I think they're all great players, and I admire many of them. And so when you put a group of professional-minded players that can legit on their instruments, not only can they play the instruments, but they know the repertoire. They know anything that I know. If I have a band like that, and I'm being compared to, say, a band of, I mean this to be derogatory, but what I call weekend warriors. They pull out that horn every Friday, they pick it up every Saturday night, and they ain't gonna look at none of that shit till the next time they have a gig. And it may not be the following week, it might be 2 weeks later. I know that their chops, their talent is degrading at an astronomical rate. If I took a group of pros that could legitimately play versus the band of weekend warriors that are looking forward to a good time and having a beer and playing whatever music, if you put them on a scale for a client, one's going to sound ultimately better. And when it comes down to the price tag, weekend warriors with day gigs are way more economical compared to a group of professionals. What do you want to see for your money? Me personally, I have 2 daughters. And luckily for them, Sold Out is already their band, without question. That's going to be the band. But if I had to pick another band, I can promise you, it won't be a weekend warrior group. It'll be a group that adheres to my standards. So maybe that word of advice has stuck with me for the next 25 years because I believe in my own bullshit. And I'm not wrong. But where I fall short in that department is that you mentioned earlier, like if somebody calls me, I'm the guy. I have no doubt in my mind. If I call Travis Mark to come play drums in any of my groups, he would kill it. And I'm going to do that one day too. I already tried a couple times.
Yeah, I
one
know.
day it's going to work out.
We're going to do it
one day it's going to work out. We will. We should. But, you know, I look at that as that's the kind of players that I gravitate to. In my phone right now, I've got about almost 3,000 contacts of musicians in my phone right now. What I call maybe the top 10% are the ones that I call consistently. The rest of them, just dudes I met along the way. You know, I think if we could conduct ourselves as a professional and you could back it up behind the kit, me with a horn in my hand, as a vocalist, whatever it is I'm doing, I want to be able people to know that this is not your average musician. And I think once you're able to take that and transfer that wisdom or that standard operating level to the people that you work with in your groups, I think your group becomes astronomically better. It'll become better than a group that's in a practice room once a week practicing as a band. I want people as the player. Because, you know, good players are good. That's fine. Great players make everyone around them better. And I've been blessed to be not only around people like that, but to become a person like that. As a guitarist that I've worked with for years, his name's Patrick Bordelon, lives out in Baton Rouge. Patrick is, to me, the best guitarist I have ever played with. Ever. He's phenomenal. Does he dance good? No. Can he play guitar and perform so passionately that it makes everybody play better? To me, that's a superpower, bro.
Oh, dude, totally.
Superpower. I want, you know, and that's what I strive to be. You know, and maybe my standards are high and reaching, but it's because I'm not done.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like there's so many things I have left to do and accomplish, and I'm one dude. I'm the marketer. I'm the music guy. I'm the production guy. I even pull the trailer, bro. Like I do it all.
Yeah.
And I enjoy doing those things, but I think that as I get older, as I turn the second half of my life, I keep saying I'm gonna delegate more. You know, so I have a music director now. I have an assistant who does a lot of the shit I don't want to do. So I can do the fun shit like production, plan, and really developing. Every year I'm out to have the best year I've ever had.
That's amazing.
You know, yeah, because without it, I've lost the ability to do everything else. I couldn't imagine my life doing anything else. You know, I had someone ask me recently on the subject about being a professional musician and had the nerve to ask me, yeah, that's cool and all, but you make any money? I'm like, yeah, do you? You know, like, what kind of stupid question was that? You know, and it goes as far as to show me how little the normal, the average stigma person, musician thinks. A lot of them think we're all trying to make it to the big stages. No, some of us are just trying to make it to the end of the month, right? To the end of the year, you know? And so I feel like I'm armed with all the things that I'm going to know. And I'm always learning. I'm always looking at other groups, other band leaders that I admire, musicians that I admire. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And because I'm always willing to help other bands. When I was young and doing this, every old band, every old guy, every band that was around was like, oh, shit, they're going to come take all our gigs. Well, we did, but not on purpose.
Yeah.
You know, it was because I was a little younger. I was armed with a lot of musical knowledge, and I was able to take the early days. I had the most feral, ruthless musicians. These guys would get drunk, trashed, break shit, great performers, but I was always I had to clean up after those guys.
Yeah.
And as I got a little bit more mindful that the people in your organization represent you.
Of course.
So, as musicians come and go as they do, I started to become a home for people that were tired of being good enough bands.
Yeah.
Good enough. Everything has to be good enough. Why can't it just be great?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't like good enough anymore.
Me neither.
Can't stand it.
Yeah, I've been over it for decades.
Yeah. The ones that say, hey, good enough is good enough, are the ones that they've given up.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, I'm not going to get any more money. What's the point doing all this shit? I ain't making no more money for this shit. Everything's become so transactional.
Yeah.
I can slap the shit out of somebody.
Yeah.
Everything we do cannot be transactional because musicians are transactional people.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. Transaction, I'm going to go with the guy that has the most transactions with me.
Yeah.
That's my guy. And so that's who I want to take care of.
It comes across just as a guy who knows what he wants more, and won't settle. I think that's a good thing,
Yeah, I think it's genuine, and there's no questions. Like I have not been in this business for 25 years doing shit that was just good enough. I did more than people. I did more than my competitors. I did more than some of the other people that I've crossed paths with over the years. Because at the end of the day, you do a good job and you're a nice guy and you want to help, people like you. Just be a dude that people like. And if musicians don't like me, the clients like me. So just remember that. Yeah.
I think that is a great way to end. Dave, I can't thank you enough for your time, dude. I know you got a big gig tonight, so we're going to start finishing up. But
and look, anytime.
Yeah.
Do anytime. I will come and do whatever because I love the questions you asked me. Thank you.
Anytime.
You made me think.
Good.
About some things. So thank you. Anytime you want me back on to talk about anything, because we and you can shovel talk on a lot of different subjects, so I think we resonate. We should start a regular series on how not to be good enough anymore.
We'll call it the Just Good Enough podcast.
Just good enough. We'll just do a segment where send us to someone who's not good enough.
Yeah.
Or who thinks that good enough is enough. But I appreciate being on here. Thank you so much, Travis, and I hope to see you soon. And by the way, that Deep Sleep Atlanta gig, look, I keep track of you guys, and one of these days, I want to come in and perform that shit live.
Dude, I'd love to have you, man. There's so many moving parts with that thing. It's a whole different conversation. Dave Mouton, everybody, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate you. Best of luck with absolutely everything.
Sweet. There we have it. Dave Mouton, everybody. I want to publicly thank Dave for his time. As usual, I want to publicly thank each and every one of you for your time. Thank you for continuing to join us on this journey. My name is Travis Mark. You can find out more about me or the Musicians Mentor podcast at musicians-mentor.com. Make sure you check out all things Dave Mouton related at the links in our show notes. Once again, don't forget to check out our affiliate partnership with the lovely folks over at Soundbrenner. Check out David Trahan's podcast, as mentioned in the middle of this show. It's called New Orleans Musicians. It's a really great show. As usual, let me finish by saying that if you need any help, advice, or guidance on your career or your band, please drop me a DM or an email. I would be more than happy to help you. Until the next time, this has been the Musicians Mentor podcast. Work hard, play hard, and I'll see you soon. Peace.